Hi, everyone.
Hello. Ray is discussing the difference between things done to God's glory, which should be everything we do in our life, and the Watchtower's conception of sacred service as somehow a segmented aspect of your life that distinguishes you from everybody else in the world and makes you righteous in God's sight, and how similar that is to the Israelite conception, that if you follow the right rituals in the law of Moses, the rest of your life is
kind of your own.
Yeah. How familiar is that?
Yeah.
So Ray says, faced with the fact that the apostles of Jesus Christ did indeed speak of basic essential acts of human living as done unto the Lord and done for God's glory, the Watchtower writer relies on an erroneous distinction between service to God and sacred service to God. How can service to God be anything but sacred? It is as if God places a premium, a greater value, on special acts as compared to daily acts, on the unusual as compared to the regular. Jehovah, in rebuking Israel, clearly showed that this was not the case. He showed that the daily exercise of mercy, compassion, and justice was always of greater importance to him than special acts which the Israelites viewed as so distinctively sacred. As he stated, and this is from Hosea 6 verse 6, which is quoted by Christ in Matthew 12:7, "For in loving kindness I have taken delight, and not in sacrifice, and in the knowledge of God, rather than in whole burnt offerings."
Ray continues, as to this knowledge of God, through his prophet Jeremiah, Jehovah asked the son of King Josiah. And here he quotes Jeremiah 22, verses 15 and 16. "As for your father, did he not eat and drink and execute justice and righteousness? In that case it went well with him. He pleaded the legal claim of the afflicted one and the poor one. In that case it went well. Was that not a case of knowing me, is the utterance of Jehovah."
Much as the people at Pentecost cried, "Brothers, what shall we do?" so Israelites asked how to render acceptable service to God. Through his prophet Micah, Jehovah presented their question and summed up the matter in this way. Quote, this is Micah 6, verses 6 to 8 in the NIV. "With what shall I come before the Lord Jehovah and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord Jehovah be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has showed you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord Jehovah require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God."
Amen.
And Ray references Psalm 15, which adds to this effect as to what constitutes true religion to the God of Israel.
"O Jehovah, who will be a guest in your tent? Who will reside in your holy mountain? He who is walking faultlessly and practicing righteousness and speaking the truth in his heart. He has not slandered with his tongue. To his companion he has done nothing bad, and no reproach has he taken up against his intimate acquaintance. In his eyes anyone contemptible is certainly rejected, but those fearing Jehovah he honors. He has sworn to what is bad for himself, and yet he does not alter. His money he has not given out on interest, and a bribe against the innocent one he has not taken. He that is doing these things will never be made to totter."
I like the ESV version of the last verse much better. He who does these things shall never be moved. And that's, of course, generated a few hymns over the centuries. I shall not be moved. Meaning, I won't change. My commitments are, even if it means, as it says here, self-sacrifice, and it becomes inconvenient to keep your commitments, you don't change. Like God, you don't change. So how does the Watchtower measure up when it comes to getting an invitation into God's tent? Who will sojourn in your tent? Who will dwell on your holy hill? Walking blamelessly, doing what is right.
Not slandering.
Speaking the truth in our hearts, consistency. And slander, I mean,
Yeah.
I would say if there's any organization on earth that's addicted to slander, not that they're alone in this, but they just do it better than everybody else.
Yeah. It's a good psalm to read and just to measure yourself. You know, as a means of, okay, how am I doing in this regard? Am I guilty of any of these things that are not pleasing to God?
That, again, as we saw in the last segment on interest, how important is this in verse 5? Who does not put out his money at interest. Again, he's not benefiting by the misery and the poverty of others.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a bribe against the innocent. This is the person that will not be moved and will be assured of a welcome in God's tent. We're going to link to a video we shot on Micah, this glorious text that I memorized even as a Jehovah's Witness about he showed you, O earthly man, what is good, and what does Jehovah require of you, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. We did a video on Micah, specifically on the teaching of Micah on the kingdom. So we'll put that on your screen.